Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And if you're looking for an up-to-date top 30 tracker for the Las Vegas Raiders, you're definitely in the right place. Now, before we dive into everything, I have to say this list isn't complete just yet. Not all of the top 30 visits have been confirmed, but I wanted to give you a glimpse of the players the Raiders are looking at and my thoughts on why these players are being brought in for these visits. I'll break it all down for you, and I promise it's going to be interesting. But before we jump into that, I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Panda UPS. If you're looking to level up your workout supplements, use code DRAFT at checkout for 25% off. Panda UPS is owned and operated by a diehard Raiders fan, so you know they have our backs. Make sure you check them out. Now, let's get into the top 30 tracker. I've organized it by position, so it's easier to follow. Right now, the Raiders have confirmed visits with players at 5 different positions, and that's where we'll start. Of course, we've already seen some combine visits, and one thing to keep in mind is that if a player is from Las Vegas or UNLV, they don't necessarily count as part of the top 30 visits. They're considered local visits, so expect to see some familiar faces from around here. But with that being said, let's dive into the quarterbacks first because, let's face it, the quarterback position is one of the most exciting, especially when you look at the prospect that the Raiders are bringing in for interviews. As it stands right now, the Silver and Black have 3 quarterbacks scheduled for top 30 visits, and we're going to start with the first name on the list, Cam Ward. Now, this is someone I'd absolutely love to see the Raiders land. He's got all the tools to succeed in the NFL, but the problem is he's likely going to be a number 1 overall pick. So realistically, the Raiders might not have a shot at him unless they make a big move, like trading up to the first pick. But even if it's a long shot, the Raiders would do well to sit down with Cam Ward. There's a lot of talk around Ward, and for good reason. He's a guy who could be a perfect fit for a system like Chip Kelly's, and if the Raiders are to pull off a trade up, it could be a game changer for the franchise. But I do think he'll be out of reach for the Raiders, and that's where things get a little more interesting. Next up, we've got Will Howard, the quarterback from Kansas State. He just helped his team win a national championship, and he's got the skill set to succeed in the NFL. Howard is a quarterback who can create both inside and outside of the pocket, which is exactly what you need in today's NFL. If you watch his tape, especially from the final 4 games of the season, it's clear this guy has the potential to be a really solid quarterback at the next level. But like any player, he's got to work on some things, and I think that's why Howard is a guy you might target on day 3 of the draft. He has a great connection to Chip Kelly's system, and that could play a big role in his development in the NFL. Then we have Quinn Ewers from Texas. This guy has an absolute cannon for an arm, and there's no denying that. The biggest question surrounding Ewers, however, is his mechanics. If he can clean up his footwork and become more consistent, I think he could be a major steal in the draft. But let's be real. If the Raiders take Ewers, he's a project. He's going to need at least 2 years to sit behind a veteran quarterback and develop. That's why I think Ewers is a perfect project pick for a team that's willing to be patient. He's tough, he's battled through injuries, and he's got the leadership qualities you want in a quarterback. But the truth is, he needs time to develop, so I don't think we'll see him starting immediately. Now, here's a question I want to throw to you, Raider Nation. When do you think the Raiders are going to draft a quarterback? Do you think it's going to be in round 1, the top of the draft? Or do you think it'll be later in the draft, maybe round 2 or 3? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I believe the Raiders will go for a quarterback on day 3 of the draft. That's been my prediction for a while, and with the deep talent in this draft class, I think the Raiders will focus their top picks on other positions. We've seen a lot of talent at the top of the draft, and I believe they'll save their top picks for other areas of need, like offensive line or defensive positions. Let's switch gears and talk about running backs. The Raiders' rushing game last season was a disaster. They averaged just 3.6 yards per carry, and they ranked dead last in the NFL in rushing yards per game. To make matters worse, the team had 10 fumbles. Watching the Raiders try to run the ball last season was frustrating, to say the least. But this year, there's a lot of talk about improving the running back room, and the Raiders are already scheduling visits with some top prospects at the position. The first name on the list is Ashton Gentry, the standout running back from Boise State. This is a guy who could be a real game changer for the Raiders, but there's one major question mark surrounding him. Can he pass protect? If Gentry can't pick up blitzes and protect the quarterback, it's going to be tough to justify drafting him at number 6 overall. But if he can improve in that area, then I think he'd be a fantastic pick for the Raiders. He's got the balance, the burst, and the patience to be a really effective back in the NFL. But again, pass protection is key for running backs in the NFL, and that's something the Raiders need to figure out before making a decision. The next running back on the radar is Caleb Johnson from Iowa. This guy is a patient runner who excels in outside zone schemes, which is something the Raiders could use with Chip Kelly running the offense. Johnson doesn't have the best lateral agility, and his performance at the NFL Combine left a little to be desired, but I'm not overly concerned about that. Johnson is the kind of back who can grind out tough yards, and that's something the Raiders need. If the team can pair him with a veteran like Raheem Mostert, it could be a solid backfield. I think Johnson could be a great pick for the Raiders in the 2nd or 3rd round. Moving on to the cornerback position, the Raiders have some interesting visits lined up. The first name that stands out is Will Johnson from Michigan. He's big, he's athletic, and he has all the traits that the Raiders look for in a cornerback. His biggest weakness is his recovery speed, but overall, he's a guy who could be a difference maker for the team. Johnson is likely to be a first-round pick, but if the Raiders decide to trade back, he could be a great value pick. There's also Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, who's likely a 2nd-round pick. Morrison has a knack for making plays on the ball, and his competitive nature is something the Raiders value. But there's a concern about his ability to flip his hips, especially after coming off a hip injury, which is something the team will need to assess closely. These are just a few of the players the Raiders are meeting with in their top 30 visits, and there's still plenty more to come as the draft approaches. The team has a lot of holes to fill, and these visits give us a glimpse into what direction they might be heading. Whether it's at quarterback, running back, or cornerback, the Raiders are making moves to improve their roster, and it's going to be interesting to see who they end up selecting. Stay tuned, Raider Nation. There's a lot more to come. Continuing on from where we left off, the Raiders are diving deep into filling some of the biggest gaps in their roster, and there are a few more positions where we're seeing significant movement. Next up, let's talk about the linebacker position. Now, I know linebacker hasn't been at the top of the priority list for the Raiders in recent years, but with how the team performed last season, it's clear that this is an area they need to address, especially if they want to compete with the top offenses in the NFL. But, as it stands, the Raiders have only one linebacker scheduled for a top 30 visit so far, and that name is Jalen Walker from Georgia. Walker is more of an outside linebacker/edge rusher type, which is interesting because the Raiders could really use someone with that type of explosiveness on their defense. If you think about how the team utilized players like Kayvon Chasen last season, it's possible that Walker could fill a similar role. While linebacker isn't necessarily the Raiders' most pressing need, Walker's athleticism makes him an intriguing option. He's the kind of player who could add depth to the edge rushing unit and provide that outside presence the Raiders have been lacking. Now, I'm not saying Walker is a surefire pick for the team, but given his freakish athletic ability, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders looked his way, especially if they decide to move on from Malcolm Koonce, or if they just want to add some more youth and explosiveness to the outside linebacker group. But, again, linebacker isn't a position that's been top of mind for the Raiders this offseason. So, while it's great that they're giving Walker a look, it's more likely that they focus on other areas first before they really dive into a linebacker pick. However, there's a possibility that if Walker doesn't fit into their plans, he could be a potential replacement for someone like Tyree Wilson if things don't work out with him in the future. Moving on from linebacker, let's talk about the safety position. Now, this is a big one, Raider Nation. Right now, I believe free safety is the Raiders' biggest need. I know some of you might be thinking, what about cornerback? Or what about linebacker? But hear me out. When you look at the current roster, the Raiders don't have anyone at free safety that you could confidently say is ready to start from day one. Sure, the team has versatile safeties, and guys like Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Palmau can do a lot of things, but neither of them are true free safeties. That's why I think the Raiders are really zeroing in on the safety position as we approach the draft. The first name I want to talk about is Malachi Starks from Georgia. In my opinion, Starks is the top safety in the 2025 draft, and he could be exactly what the Raiders need to solidify their secondary. Starks is a true do-it-all safety who can cover ground, stop the run, and play well in both man and zone coverage. Of course, he does have a tendency to get beaten deep every once in a while, but that could be due to overconfidence considering how stacked Georgia's defense was last season. Still, Starks is a beast, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him go in the first round. If the Raiders decide to trade back and he's available, he could be an excellent pick for them. But, and this is important, I don't think the Raiders should take him at pick number 6. While he's incredibly talented, I think there are other positions the team needs to address first. And unless they trade back, Starks might be a bit too high for them in the first round. Another name the Raiders are looking at is Nick Emery, a safety from South Carolina. Emery is a guy I've had my eye on for a while, and I honestly think he could be a fantastic addition to the Raiders' defense. He's got the size, the speed, and the athleticism to excel in a variety of roles, and I love the way he plays. He reminds me a bit of Cam Chancellor, with his ability to play both as a safety and as a linebacker. Emery is a physical presence in the secondary, and he loves to hit people, which is exactly the kind of mentality the Raiders need. He's a versatile player who can make plays in coverage or against the run, and he could really help the Raiders' defense become more dynamic. However, there's a chance Emery could go earlier than expected, so the Raiders might need to move back in the draft if they want to secure him. But if they do, I think Emery could be a real difference maker for the silver and black. Now, while the Raiders are clearly looking at safety as one of their biggest needs, there are a few other prospects that have caught their attention. One of those names is Xavier Watts, and from what I've been hearing, the Raiders are going to pay close attention to him leading up to the draft. I don't have any official confirmation that he's part of the Raiders' top 30 visits yet, but based on what I've been hearing, don't be surprised if his name pops up in the next few weeks. Watts is another versatile safety who could fit well into the Raiders' defense, and he's a player to keep an eye on in the coming weeks. We've also seen the Raiders meet with a handful of prospects at their pro days, and while these players might not be as high profile as some of the top 30 visit guys, it's worth noting that the Raiders are still keeping tabs on a lot of players. At the Big 12 Pro Day, they met with players like Jeffrey Boza, a linebacker from Oregon, and Teddy Buchanan from Cal. Both of these players are intriguing, and while they might not be first-round picks, they could provide some solid depth for the team. The Raiders are also looking at Caleb Etienne from BYU, a raw prospect who still has a lot of potential, and Caleb Rogers, an offensive lineman from Texas Tech. Rogers is a versatile lineman who's played all over the offensive line, and that's exactly the kind of player the Raiders love to bring in. He could provide some much-needed depth to their offensive line, and I wouldn't be surprised if they targeted him in the later rounds of the draft. As it stands right now, those are the main players the Raiders have visited or are scheduled to visit. With the draft just around the corner, there's still plenty of time for the Raiders to make more moves, and I expect them to do so. Whether it's targeting players at the quarterback position, running back, linebacker, safety, or cornerback, the Raiders are looking to improve every aspect of their roster. With their eyes on the future, it's clear that the team is focused on getting younger, faster, and more talented across the board. Raider Nation, the draft is coming up, and it's going to be exciting to see how everything shakes out. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The Las Vegas Raiders are now in possession of the greatest football player to ever play the game, Tom Brady. But his presence isn't just about his legacy. It's a symbol of change, of a new era, one that has shaken the very foundation of the Raiders organization. With Brady as a minority owner, everything feels different. His unparalleled success and deep connections have already begun to reshape the silver and black. Under his influence, the Raiders secured a proven, battle-hardened head coach in Pete Carroll, while Brady's network brought in John Spytek, the best general manager candidate available. But behind the scenes, there's more to Brady's story. His decision to leave the New England Patriots, where he spent 2 decades with Bill Belichick, wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. It was a slow burn, a tension that built over years. As Brady recently revealed, that fateful decision came into sharp focus in March of 2020, after years of reflection. There was an undeniable shift in the relationship between him and Belichick, one that had once been rock solid, but over time became strained. Their destinies were no longer aligned, and Brady knew change was inevitable. The decision wasn't easy, and Brady didn't make it lightly. He meticulously weighed every factor, ranking them on a scale from 1 to 3. He placed immense importance on having skilled players around him, and it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with stars like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, that graded the highest. Even more critical was the presence of a coach who could push him to greatness. Bruce Arians earned a solid score in that category, tipping the scales in Tampa's favor. Brady's move to the Buccaneers wasn't just about money or prestige. It was about a fresh start, a place where his talents would thrive. As he linked up with Spytek, his former Michigan teammate, in Tampa Bay, Brady sealed his fate. Together, they crafted a new chapter in Brady's illustrious career, culminating in that unforgettable 7th Super Bowl ring. It was a victory that not only added to Brady's legacy, but also cemented the enduring impact of his decisions, which now extend beyond the field and into the heart of the Raiders organization. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.